So in the comments, you guys mentioned you wanted some updates on our lagoon tank. Here you are. So the last time we discussed this tank, we were switching from the Gen 4s to the Gen 5s. Needless to say, we're extremely happy with the output. The corals are really happy. The spread is excellent. I don't think we would do anything differently if we were to do it again. So we run these Gen 5 lights with no diffusers. One of the things that we struggled with the Gen 4 lighting that we're really happy with on the Gen 5 is that we don't see any of the colors in the sand bed. With as much sand as in this tank, you can always see those streaks of red and streaks of violet. Here that doesn't happen anymore, so the new generation brings that next level. In the back of the tank, the two lights that are directly above the mangrove, they run at 100% intensity and 100% spectrum, so all channels turned all the way up. Overall, the color and the performance of the lights are top notch. We're extremely happy with the output. Everything has been doing really good since we last discussed this tank. As a matter of fact, we make a lot of frags out of here too, which is kind of funny because it doesn't seem like it. It's such a big tank, you guys don't see the growth like we do. If you're interested in the schedule for this aquarium, you can go to our homepage. Below the YouTube videos on our homepage, there is a lighting schedule for all of our main aquariums in our Superstore. And we will also post a link in our description below. The tank is becoming more mature, so we're starting to see that corals are overlapping one another. We're having to remove them and move them to a different spot. We're having to trim the corals a little bit more frequently because it is growing really well. The Monopora are a prime example. If we don't stay on top of them, they'll take an entire rock to themselves. The zoanthids are doing extremely well. We have hundreds of varieties in this tank, and it's cool because you don't get to see all of them. We have to get inside of the tank in order to find some of the corals that are in the back, which is nice because it could be a month or two before you see them again. And by that time, they're, rather than a single polyp or a double polyp, a mini colony. So one really cool addition, we had a new clam. It's massive. It's gotta be at least 12 inches. We sold it to a customer a couple of years back and it got too big for a 600-gallon tank. So one of the nice parts about having a large display tank is there's corals that we've had for generations and generations in this aquarium. And when we do trim them, they come from this tank and they go straight into our aquaculture facility, which is nice because it's something that we've tried for years to make happen. And we're able to produce hundreds upon hundreds of generationally aquacultured corals for everybody to purchase on our website. These corals end up in packs. They end up as what you see is what you get corals. You can rest assured that they came from a good home. In the last video, we talked about adding some new power heads to the aquarium for some more flow, and it didn't work out the way that we wanted to. We added 2 MP60s to each back wall. It was too much for the corals, especially the Euphyllia at the top of the tank and the mushrooms that are out in the open water movement. We're gonna try to add like a proverbial closed loop in between the channels of rock in this tank. We're starting to realize that the flow in between the rock structures is really not sufficient enough. We're getting detritus piles. We're starting to have a little bit of a difficulty with the sand bed, which is not terrible, it just doesn't look the way that we would like it to. We're actually gonna come over the back corner of the tank with a closed loop, hopefully discreet enough to the point where it's not seen from the front, just to deliver that additional flow that the tank needs while still staying subtle for the corals that need it to be subtle. Inside of this aquarium is a lot of really desirable corals, things that a lot of people ask us for. Our Holy Grail torch is one that always comes to the top of the list. We have an incredible anemone backed by the overflow. If you didn't know it was there, you would probably never see it, but it's outstanding. In the front of the tank on the left-hand side, there's a beautiful Spaceballs Mycelium chalice. There's a couple of corals that are to be named, one of which is a mushroom that's about 12 inches across. There's enough real estate in this tank to where each time I speak with a customer and time has elapsed, it seems to be different, or they find a new coral, or they ask about trying to get one of the corals out of this tank. Just like every other aquarium here, this tank gets fed many, many times in a day. We feed our own reef mix, something that we make in-house, and we also sell to our local patrons. Towards the evening, Sean likes to throw his spin on it and just throw a chum bucket in the tank. So one of my favorite parts about this tank is the mangrove. We actually got it from Julian when we opened our store, and it was 9 years old then. So we're almost 2 years in. The last time we did this video, I'm sure you can see the difference between the growth then and the growth now. And we'll put a link in the description below. It's probably grown an additional 8 inches in height, and it's filled in much, much more. When we put this mangrove in this tank, we knew it was going to be a challenge. We were told that it's not going to do well long term. We put a really monster bed of mixed substrate. While it was fresh substrate at the time, now it's really rich in nutrients. If you were to move any of it around, you see is a dark plume of stuff. I'm sure that's why it's doing good. So originally, the rock structure where the mangrove was to sit was kind of donut shaped. And when we placed it, we knew that there would be an opportunity to put some of the lower light corals back there on that rock structure. Unfortunately, it's grown and filled in so well now that it shades almost too well. So it may be an opportunity in the future for some NPS corals. We get a lot of questions about our filtration and the equipment that we use. It's all behind the scenes, so it doesn't look the prettiest, but it's extremely functional. This tank has a calcium reactor on it, and we've actually recently implemented kalkwasser, which is one of our absolute favorite additives. It can be a little bit tricky, but if you can figure out how to use kalkwasser properly, it is the best, in our opinion. We deliver the kalkwasser through a constant speed peristaltic pump. Yes, we understand the silicone tubes don't hold up long with the kalkwasser, but it's the easiest way to provide a constant dose at the pace in which it needs. The theme that we always stick with is very, very simple. We don't use the most high-tech gadgets. While our lights are the best that we can buy, everything else is just kind of functional. We did change our UV to 150 watt UV as opposed to the 120 that we had before. It seems to be more efficient, and you can probably see from the water clarity that it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So for those of you who are still trying to figure out why we only filled the tank halfway full, because it looks amazing from the top. I mean, there's no other way to put it. When you stop the flow and you look at the tank from the top down, it's breathtaking. Most people don't realize there's 10,000 pounds of pressure on the glass. So in order to do what we did, we had to go taller with the glass without bracing and without going with a thicker glass just to keep that clean look. It also allowed us to have the mangrove in the back of the tank while not being exposed to the rest of the room. We have a lot of conversation with people who visit our store about how we keep our lights so high off the water. To be honest, these lights are extremely powerful. So anybody that has a Radion, whether it be a Gen 5 or a Gen 4, I don't think very many hobbyists realize how powerful they really are. The fact that we keep this tank at only 65% intensity, and we have probably 150 different acropora growing in here, it's pretty impressive. Oftentimes, hobbyists tend to put too much light on a tank, when if you were to just scale it back a little bit, you would realize how many more colors there are in your coral. In the wild where these corals are collected, they're usually below 60 foot of depth. So it just goes to show it's really not necessary to give them as much light as we try to. I guess it's time to get back to work. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the comments below.